Mass is being brought to you by Rotary Club East. This week on Mass.
Yes, well, of course I support that call and have also advocated over the years for that as far as the prison goes, because we don't have a facility when people who are affected by mental illness and they come in conflict with the law, and sometimes it might be a serious crime. Our prison facility is an overcrowded facility. Our prison facility is one that has existed for more than 100 years. And over that period, you don't have necessarily modern facilities being introduced. It's largely overcrowded. It's overcrowded means that it was a facility built to accommodate less than 200. And you have numbers like 400 plus, just under 400.
So we are talking to you today about the fact that two of your colleague lawyers have been in the media requesting that there be a different space for persons with mental health conditions who have been who have committed a crime instead of being put in the wider prison system. What say you about that?
Yes, well, of course I support that call and have also advocated over the years for that as far as the prison goes, because we don't have a facility when people who are affected by mental illness and they come in conflict with the law, and sometimes it might be a serious crime. Our prison facility is an overcrowded facility. Our prison facility is one that has existed for more than 100 years. And over that period, you don't have necessarily modern facilities being introduced. It's largely overcrowded. And therefore, there is no space to do the kind of separation that is desirable
In a situation
coming in contact with the law.
So in a situation where someone with a mental illness has to be the wider, tell me what it's like. You would have, what is it like? I mean, it's better to get it from someone who would have experienced it. But from your knowledge, what is it like? You say it's overcrowded. Give me some more.
Well, yes. Well, it's overcrowded means that it was a facility built to accommodate less than 200. And, you have numbers like 400 plus, just under 400. So it means that the facility has to house more than twice time the accommodation it was built for, one. And two, mental patients need special care. They need special care. And when you, so you have to accommodate them in an area and in a place where they can get special care. Because what happens is that either people may take advantage of them or they may pose a threat to the other prisoners. And you live basically in that atmosphere of fear. At times, they might be locked down. And, you know, people who suffer from mental illnesses are humans too.
Certainly.
And they are entitled to the same rights that the Constitution provides for all other citizens. The Constitution does not say, save and except persons who suffer from mental illness. Everyone is entitled to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, the right not to be subjected to cruel and inhuman punishment. It's for everybody. And in the modern context, what is expected is that there would be facilities or systems to be able to manage people who suffer from mental illness.
Recently that there are plans afoot along with a new mental health act which is over 100 years old, because we discussed that in the past. There are plans for a rehabilitation center. Now, you said you've advocated for persons with mental health conditions to be housed separately, those who would have gotten themselves involved in a negative way with the law. What do you think needs to be done for there to be some action on the advocacy for this? Because you said you've spoken about it in the past. I heard two other lawyers be very vocal about it recently. We're hearing about a rehabilitation center and, of course, work being done for a new mental health act. Could we advocate for that to be attached? What do you think needs to be done for this to be addressed finally?
Well, it's integral. It's integral, for example, a new act. All of this is integral to the issue of how we treat with mental patients. The fact that they are housed in the Richmond Hill prisons together with others, that's just one feature of how they are treated. It's just one feature. But we have to develop a whole different attitude to mental patients or persons who face mental challenges, because it's a sickness, just like any other sickness. And it requires treatment, just like any other illness. It requires a particular management to be able to keep things under control and ensure that these very persons don't come in contact with the criminal justice system.
Patients who have mental issues, in my opinion, as a psychotherapist, should not be held in the same population as general criminals or ordinary criminals. They should be separated and given a treatment plan that will help them to recover so that they can be reincorporated into the society. They must be separated in that they can be a danger to the general population, or they can be a danger to themselves, or even the persons who are the wardens and other persons who are looking after the prisoners. So my take is that a prisoner, a criminal who has mental issues must first be treated before any other aspect of the law kicks in. That person has the right to be treated for his mental condition, his or her mental condition. And when that person has come to a point where he is deemed to be fit to stand trial or to be worked on as it relates to the law, then that can happen. But he has to be first dealt with.
So it's all interrelated. And you mentioned a new act. No, that is more than long overdue, because as you are aware, we have dealt with this on prior programs. Our Mental Hospitals Act is an 1885 act. We are now in 2024. That act, by 2025, will be a 140-year-old act we have that addresses mental patients or persons who suffer from mental illness. 140 years without change. And in this modern day and age, we still exist under this act. Now, what this says is that we continue to be indifferent and not appreciate the importance of addressing that issue. And the thing about the Mental Hospitals Act, talking about attitude to mental patients, well, the Mental Hospitals Act actually provides the basis for abusing and treating mental health patients a particular way.
You're certainly correct, because you shared that with me in the past. Yeah.
Yes, as I have said before, its short title alone speaks volumes, speaks about an act to deal with lunatics. And throughout that act, references are made to lunatics and criminal lunatics and all kind of category of lunatics. That language is not just outdated, but is outlawed in all modern circles. You don't refer, you speak about mental patients. You don't talk about a lunatic, but that's the law that governs us in 2024. Amazing, but true. And there is need for concentrated effort to be made to introduce more than gradual changes, because you need radical change. You need radical change.
Certainly.
And it starts with an act that really revokes this whole act and replaces it with a modern act.
Have you had any interface with the new act? Or do you know anything about it? Do you
remember? I was
that was back in 2010.
More than 20. Well, before 2010,
Uh-huh.
2005, 2006 with crafting a new
Yes.
act.
Yes.
I was asked then,
Mm-hmm.
it was PAO,
Yes.
the Pan American Health Organization.
Mm-hmm.
I was approached then to, look at the different acts in the region and craft a new proposed act
Mm-hmm.
for discussion. And I remember using at the end of the day when looking at all the different acts, using the Jamaica Act as a model. Because in that new act, the focus was on the rights of the patient.
Yes, that's
There's no
where,
language of
yes,
lunatics. You speak
yes.
about mental patients. In fact, the focus is not hospitalization
It's community
or
based.
institutionalizing a patient, but the focus is on integrating mental health care with primary health care. So at the community level, the nurses and medical staff are able to monitor patients in the communities, ensure that they take their medication and whatever other treatment that they are required to take. So you have a database of people who suffer with mental illness. So they are monitored. And if, for example, somebody is noted that somebody did not take their medication for 2-3 weeks, and technology allows that now, then you don't wait for some call that person is unleashing violence somewhere in the community. You reach out and ensure that person takes his or her medication. So less institutionalization and more focus on primary health care, preventative measures, so that you don't get to this stage where you have people with mental illness coming into conflict with the law and at times committing serious crime.
You spoke about advocating for a different space for persons who would have come, people with mental health conditions who would have come into contact with the law, right? Okay, you advocated for that, a different space. Do you have an area in mind that you can speak to or suggest to the powers that be, or something so
Well,
that
it will have to be a secure place, a secure place. I mean, ideally, you have a mental hospital and possibly a wing at that hospital. Or if it has to be up in the prisons, then it will have to be again in the prisons. You have to build a special facility. Because these people are patients. Yes, they are prisoners, but they're also patients because they suffer from mental illness. And they, when possessed with that mental illness and whatever triggers certain reactions, then they do things that they would not ordinarily do. And that is why you need to have the kind of specialists in society who are able to treat with these people. So, for example, in some of these countries, then if there is an issue with a mental patient runs amok, you have a special team to go there. And that team is less muscle mass and armed forces trained to shoot and kill than trained medical personnel who would go there and can deal with the mental patient and subdue the mental patient without necessarily inflicting violence on him or her. Right? So that's where the modern the modern approach. So, for example, and I discovered that during my sojourn with this Mental Health Act and the consultations, especially that followed in 2010 after the initial draft had gone up to PAHO, and they made amendments and sent the latest version back to Grenada and requested me to do consultations on the draft. So I did it. It was about 2010, went through the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Consultations at the community level and consultations at the sectoral level too. So you have nurses, police officers, and others, interested parties who you meet with specifically on the issue of mental health and what can we do to improve the lives of mental patients, but not just improve the lives, but protect them through legislation, protect their property through legislation, protect their human rights through legislation. And one of the things that I discovered is that what happened is that somebody might be behaving bad, and a family member takes them to Monge, says, well, I can't handle him. And then 30 plus years after, the patient is still there. It's like house. House, that's where you go to live.
Yeah, because it's
as opposed to be treated like a hospital.
Yes, because
like general hospital. Imagine a patient going up in a general hospital, and 10 years after, still on the bed there in Male Medical or one of these places. It is a hospital. It is a hospital where people go to be treated. But then you have the stigma associated with it. And therefore, family members either would want to disassociate themselves, one, or two, may not be able to genuinely handle or manage a person, particularly if that individual is violent. So, under the new legislation, for example, provisions were made. There were certain protocols that needed to be followed to admit a mental patient and to keep a mental patient. And there was the requirement that trained doctors see these people over specific time periods. And that you don't only have one doctor, but you have another doctor who confirms and who signs off, whether to keep or to release. But the whole idea is that you can't go there and spend 30, 35 years just residing, because it will become overcrowded after a while.
Well,
and it more becomes like an elderly home.
Definitely, because
what happens now to the new people who require treatment in a mental institution? No beds, because it's occupied by the elderly, so you have all these issues.
Definitely.
But yes. And I just want to mention, because I mentioned about the Mental Hospital Act, and it's an act to deal with lunatics. And lunatics, the concept of lunatics is described or defined in the act. It says, a lunatic is a person, including an idiot and any other person of unsound mind.
Wow.
Imagine this language. An idiot. As if lunatic is not bad enough, the law goes further and seeks to explain what it means. And explain what it means, it says an idiot.
Hence the reason why there's so much stigma and people treat persons with mental health conditions with such disrespect and disregard.
That is the
The law.
It's the idea, that's what your law says, and your law ought to be followed, and it's looked up to because it provides the guidance as to what to do and what not to do.
Exactly.
And it speaks about the principal object of the act, the principal object of the Mental Hospitals Act, because it's described as the Mental Hospitals Act.
Mm-hmm.
Its principal object is to provide for the custody of lunatics.
Provide
Yes,
for the
so in other words, for the custody of lunatics. So hey, somebody is displaying certain symptoms, no problem, you put him in. Not a problem if 5 years after he's still there.
Wow.
Getting treatment or not getting treatment, and that's why you need the law.
Yes, to guide you.
And you need appropriate laws in place to guide these issues, because if you don't have the law which can be enforced, then you will continue to have problems.
Well, they have been working on the new law, and I learned recently that it's soon incoming. So we could look to that very soon, between 2024 or 2025 is right around the corner. So there should be more talk about this new law that will replace the lunatic-ridden one of the past. And so people with mental health conditions who come in contact with the law, or people in general with mental health conditions, do not have to feel as though they're not citizens. They're not, bound by human rights and so on. So it's necessary that the law reflects the times, the changes, and respect every citizen via the laws and so on, and the rights, the human rights.
Yes. And that's why even you have these incidents with police officers being called out because an individual goes on a rampage. And what a police officer would know is, listen, you have to stop this force by the use of force. Similarly, the prisons. Prison officers are not necessarily trained to deal with, especially with mental patients. And you do or you treat with them with the kind of training that you know. And it usually revolves around force, because of course they have to protect other people.
And themselves.
And themselves, of course. And so it's really about striking the balance and recognizing it's really a change in mindset.
Yes.
That is what is required. A total change in mindset. And to understand that they have rights too, and the same rights that every other citizen is entitled to. The mental health patient is entitled to those rights.
Excellent.
And once we understand that as a starting point, it becomes much easier to sensitize, educate, inform the public, and to get a totally different attitude, starting with people at in schools. School children like to tease.
Yep.
They must know not to tease people who suffer from mental illness. There's a certain empathy that must be shown. But you can only know that if it is taught. You can't know that if your act speaks to them as idiots and lunatics.
So true.
Yes.
Listening to you speak here, what comes to mind? This show, MASS, the mental awareness show, we're seeking to educate, advocate, and share information about mental health. And I'm speaking to you, and I'm thinking to myself, he's a lawyer, high stakes. How do you balance it? How do you take care of your own mental health?
No. That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, you have to manage as best as possible. to ensure that stresses don't get the better of you, because essentially in a job like this, you're dealing with everybody else's stresses. And you
Yes.
have to make sure at the end of the day, because uh, you are dealing with problems, you are dealing with people, and you are dealing with a system too that can be very stressful, a system that moves slowly. And you have to find ways. And that's why things as mediation, for example, I
Mhm.
always say mediation is one of the most important injections in the court system over the last 20 plus years. In fact, this year is 20 years since mediation was introduced in the Eastern Caribbean
Mhm.
Supreme Court system, and where you are less adversarial and you are more amicable in your approach to issues. That
Ah,
encourages people to sit
and
and
cut.
engage. Yes, those discussions and engagements may become heated at times, but it is not as stressful as when you have to face the system um, in an adversarial manner. You know, not everybody has the same level of strength uh, to to deal with some of these issues.
That's true. So do you
So
play sports? What do you do? I'm getting into your
yes,
business.
well, I exercise.
Uh-huh.
When I've been starting and stopping, when it really gets hectic, then you start and you stop, and it's bad. You try to eat well, and as the saying goes, you must sleep, which is what I don't do.
Ah.
Because you tend to make, late hours, early hours, as the case
Mhm.
may be. But it's important that you preserve your own mental health. And
Mhm.
again, it's just advocating for others in itself can be very therapeutic. In just advocating for change, advocating for positive change, advocating for the marginalized in society. That it's an important contribution, critical, and that you see the difference that you can make, and you try to make, and
Well,
sometimes succeed in making. That is also good for your mental health.
you know,
You know.
I'm always happy to speak with you because I learned so much, and
Mm.
you're so well able to share and explain what you know about the system, about mental health, about our Mental Hospitals Act, and the changes that are needed, and changes are afoot, and we're clapping and hoping and praying that we see the wording change, everything change, the laws change, so that people with mental health conditions can be treated as human beings too. And I'm really grateful that you took the time out of your busy schedule to speak with us at Mass. And I want you to continue exercising, starting and stopping. I know a lot about the starting and stopping, but
Mm.
keep starting and stopping and taking care of yourself, because people, advocates like you, are needed in Grenada. So thank you so much, Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, well, thank you, and let me encourage you also and your team to continue the advocacy on behalf of mental patients. It's a very important role. You might think at times that you're not making the inroads that you would wish to make, but eventually it happens. And more and more people over a period of time, as time passes, they are won over to the cause and they make their voices heard. So, for example, in my case, had I not been exposed to this particular project, in fact, it was an eye opener. I was horrified to look
Ah,
at that. When I looked at that mental health hospital, it was unbelievable,
mm,
unbelievable. and the consultations throughout the country too. Being, coming in contact with people who would relate their experiences, then there is need for change. And I'm quite happy, as you indicated earlier, that change seems to be around the corner. I won't hold my breath, by the way, but I look forward.
Don't blow the air out. Don't blow the air out.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
hoping. All
Yes.
right. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much.
and continue your great work.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mass is being brought to you by Rotary Club East.